Hello everybody, W&J's Handy Dad here, and today we're talking about Christmas lights. I'm going to share with you my tips. These really have helped me out through the years and makes putting them up and taking them down a lot easier. You're looking at my box here, and if you notice my little chicken scratch mailbox front, that's going to be my first tip, is tell you when you figure out where lights go and you take them down, mark them. Tip number 2 along the same lines, you see how I've got them on cardboard. It makes storing them and getting them out a lot easier. So like this tells me these go in the front of the house. I don't have to think, are these the lights that go along the side or the back? You see, you dig a little deeper there, there's the garage bushes. So that just tells me where these go. And I kind of have I've been living in this house now for 15 years, so I kind of have a idea of what needs coverage and what doesn't. Something that we have on our Christmas lights that we didn't have on our Halloween lights, and if you want to see my Halloween decorating tips, I'll post a link up on here for that. But Christmas, we actually have lights on the roof, and if you see these little plastic clips here, this slides up underneath the shingle and holds the lights very well, but it also makes it very easy to take down, because once you start the lights coming down, if you just pull, these will just come undone one after another. They stay attached to the lights in the same spot, of course, but they come right off the roof for you very easily. Now I will tell you, several of these break. I'm guessing storing them in the attic in the Texas heat over the summer is not good, but we'll typically break several of these putting them up. I don't really worry too much about it. Just, have a pocket full of replacements ready to go when you're up on the ladder, and when they break, if they can't be salvaged, and replace them. Put these, depending on the amount of wind and other factors, maybe every foot to every 10 or 20 feet. Just depends on what you're needing, and you'll learn all that as you wire up your house. The other thing that I had talked about in the Halloween video that I didn't actually show you was how to make a custom gap. And so, for example, let's say that this light here ends at a point on your house, and then there's a space of nothingness that you don't want lights on, but lo and behold, on here, the next light is less than a foot away, so you'd have this light put in a spot that you really didn't want it to be in. Well, what I would do in that circumstance is kind of untwist this wire, get it separated out, and mark the wire that you're cutting. In this case, it looks like there's actually 3 wires, so we would want to have one maybe we'd leave white, one maybe we'd mark red, and one maybe I'd mark green or blue or something. Really doesn't matter as long as you mark it so that you know which wire you're going to be putting back together. So we mark them, like I said, maybe I'll put a big red mark here and a blue or black mark here, and then we'll cut it in the middle of our mark so that half the mark's there and half the mark's there. And then I just measure out enough wire. For example, maybe I need a 3-foot gap here of no lights, so I'll get a 3-foot piece of wire for each color that I've marked on here. And again, the wire that you're putting in, the color doesn't matter. You probably want to do the same gauge. This looks like it's about an 18 gauge, possibly a 16. So I'd want to get the same gauge wire just so that we don't have any problems there. Strip back about a 1/2 inch of the insulation, and then solder in the new piece of wire, and that way you'd have like in my example, a 3-foot gap here of no lights, and then when you got to the edge of wherever this goes, and then you'd have your 3-foot run, and then the next light starts. So you can do a lot of custom work on these if you have the time and the desire to do it. That's definitely a nice touch. If you've seen a house that has custom cuts in their lighting, it certainly looks better than just having a bunch of lights hanging in a place where it doesn't look like they need to be. Alright, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We'll start with the front. I'm gonna need ladders to get up there. I'm thinking our roof gets up there a good 20 feet or so, and so I'm gonna need the tall ladder. I like to use light timers. That way they come on and go off without me having to go out there and manually plug anything in, or if I'm not here or whatever. So I've set the time. It's about 11 a.m. right now. I'm going to go plug this in so that it will keep time, and then this one will be used to power my front lights and my side lights. I'll show you kind of how that works. I also am charging up my solar lights, so I usually will put out some solar lights like that. So right now I've got them sitting out here in the sun just charging up, and once they're ready to go, I'll put them where they need to go. I put up the timer now. You see secured it there. There's also a nail underneath there that holds it up in the back, and so now I have my power point here that will come on at 5 o'clock every day and turn off at 11 every night. Before you hang up all your lights and then find out that they're not working, it's always a good idea to test them on the ground. So I've got them plugged in and they seem to be working fine, so that's a good sign. I usually don't worry too much if there's one bulb out, but obviously you start getting more than one out, sometimes big sections will go out. Also, if you've seen the Halloween video, I have a tool that you can plug into the socket, and sometimes it'll clear out the line if there's junk in there keeping a section out, and also it'll help you sometimes determine if there's more than one bulb out and so there's a whole section out. It'll kind of help you find whether there's the 2 that are out or 3 that are out. So here's the starting point. I've got it plugged in. I usually put at least 1 or 2 staples just to make sure that these don't come out, and then I'll start running them along the roof line. So I'm up here on the ladder, and you'll see these clips are breaking like crazy, but they are thankfully breaking in a way that they're still holding the lights up here. So they're running about every 18 inches over here. I had to guess. I don't have a ruler out, obviously. So I'm going to continue on up to the peak, and then it gets easier from there. So this is what the clips look like when they're coming out of the box. They have this extra piece on them. What I actually use, we break off this piece. I can't remember what this piece they said was used for. It's never been anything I've ever needed, but I guess maybe some house or some applications you use that piece. Anyway, so this piece slides up under your shingle. This little spiral here kind of holds it in place, and then the wire from the light goes in this side here. If this piece breaks off, obviously the piece does not work anymore, or if this stake breaks off, it doesn't work anymore. I've actually never had this long piece break off. It's usually either this piece or the curl there. If the curl breaks off, usually they'll still work, maybe not as well, but as you saw when I was putting these up, I had several that this piece broke off, mainly because usually you're pulling up on it to get it to pinch against the shingles, and if your shingles are thick, a lot of times it breaks somewhere in there. that's how I get up there. I'm a 250-pound guy. That's a 300-pound ladder, and I'll tell you, it never feels like it's strong enough to hold me, although this one's certainly a lot stronger than some of the other 300-pound ladders I've had. This is one of those gap spots I was talking about. When you get to the edge of here, logically it runs straight up to that and then across there. Well, the problem is you want just an empty wire here. This looks like it's about 3 or 4 feet. Now, some of the past wires that I've had on this house, I've actually cut that in and put the little gap here. This particular strand I haven't done that, and so I've just kind of left well, there's a couple lights kind of sitting here on the roof. Again, I'm not feeling super motivated to cut this into a custom wire here, but if I was going to do that, I would start it right after this light here on the end. Like I said, I'd mark these wires, probably several inches of them, make them red, white, and blue or something like that before I cut them, and then solder in. I'd measure it first, but like I said, it looks like about a 3 or 4 foot run up to there. And then that way you'd have a light here and then nothing going up there, and then the light starting again as it goes across there. Well, this is another place where you're going to do this custom gap in right there. You might even run the lights all the way to the edge and then have your gap come down and then start your lights again there. But you can see what I'm talking about without the gap. You have basically lights just sitting there on your roof. So at nighttime it looks really nice if you take the time to put those custom gaps in. Like I said, I'm just not feeling all that motivated this year to do it, but I've told you how to do it, and you know, if you watch my wiring, soldering videos and stuff, it's super easy to do. I'm doing the front door lights, and just like in the Halloween video, at the same setup, I have the timer plugged in there. I have this extension cord that runs up and across there and down, and that brings power to the other side of the house without having a cable that you got to walk on. And just like in the Halloween, I've got a couple staples that have survived over the years, so I usually try to just hang the wires in there instead of trying to, you'll see when you pull staples out, sometimes you mess up your siding. Thankfully, when you paint that, usually those are hidden. But you can tell I haven't painted now in a few years, so about time to do it again. Of course, what I hate is as soon as you paint, then you put up lights and start the process over, so it gets kind of annoying. But anyway, so that's what we're going to do. We'll run front door section lights across. Like I said, I have a marked front door wrapped up. I've already tested them and they seem to be lighting up. This is another spot where a custom gap would be more attractive. Instead, I've got the lights running along here. So it'd be better to have them start here. As far as running through the bushes, I usually just kind of wind them through the bushes and let the branches naturally hold them. And it seems to work pretty well.